So as of early 2023, JBL's PartyBoost lineup of speakers is very robust and there's a lot of speakers to choose from. Now, whether you're thinking about upgrading or if you're trying to choose your first JBL speaker, today we're going to break down JBL's current PartyBoost lineup of speakers and let's see which one's right for you. Now first, I'm going to have to start off by saying that no, the Clip 4 doesn't have PartyBoost, but I'm still including it in this video because I think the Clip 4 is a great little speaker and it retails for 80 bucks. But then there's the Flip 5, which retails for $90, the Flip 6 retails for $130, the Charge 5 retails for $180, the Pulse 4 retails for $200, the Pulse 5 retails for $250, the Extreme 3 retails for $380, the Boombox 2 retails for $400, and the Boombox 3 retails for $500. Now, overall, I am a fan of JBL speaker lineup, so if you want to pick any of these speakers up, they'll be linked down below. And if you want to further support the channel, check out the merch shelf down below. I've made some shirts and hoodies that look and feel great, and if you've been watching me for a while, you know I can be very particular, so I'll only set my name on something that I'm really proud of. Now first, let's talk about the design of these speakers. Now the Clip 4 is a small little speaker that you can clip on your backpack, and it also makes a great little speaker for the shower. Both the Flip 5 and Flip 6 are relatively small and they're super easy to take on the go with you. But more importantly, they both pack a bigger punch than the Clip 4. But then there's the Charge 5, which is noticeably larger than both flips, but it's still relatively small, so taking it on the go with you is still relatively easy. But then there's the Pulse 5 and Pulse 4. Now these speakers are a little larger and a little heavier than the Charge 5, but they're still easy enough to take on the go with you. But the Pulse 5 does have a built-in loop, so you can always hang it from places. But next up are the big boys. Now the Extreme 3 is a large Bluetooth speaker. It's still easy enough to take on the go with you thanks to its shoulder strap, but this isn't a speaker that you'll be carrying around in your backpack. But then there are the Boombox 2 and Boombox 3. Now these things are pretty big, but they're still relatively easy to take on the go with you considering their size. The only thing that I don't like about them is that they will roll around in your trunk if you don't tie them down when you're driving. Now durability wise, all of these speakers are waterproof to a certain degree, but what really matters is that if any of these speakers get wet or if they get rained on or if they get dropped in a pool, they're all going to be perfectly fine. Now the majority of these speakers also have mostly fabric wrap bodies, so they do a really good job of standing up from constant abuse from bumps and scrapes. However, there's the Pulse 5 and Pulse 4, which both have acrylic bodies, and from my testing, I found that these acrylic bodies are fairly durable. Now, yes, you are going to get some deep scratches if you were to drop these speakers from 2 feet in the air onto some pavement, but the important thing is that these acrylic bodies don't shatter very easily. But the reason why the Pulse 5 and Pulse 4 have these acrylic bodies is because they have these built-in light features. Now, I'm going to be honest, with both the Pulse 5 and Pulse 4, you're mainly paying for the light feature. However, these light features are very dynamic and they're very impressive, and they're going to liven up your bedroom, or they're simply going to look really cool while they're on your porch at night. However, during the daytime, they can be a little hard to see. Now, the light features on both the Pulse 5 and Pulse 4 look the same. However, the Pulse 5 does have a ground effect because the passive radiator on the Pulse 5 has built-in LEDs as well. But just keep in mind, these light features do take their toll on the battery lives. Now, when it comes to battery life, both the Pulse 5 and Pulse 4 have an advertised battery life of 12 hours, but real-world use with these speakers playing at 80% volume, both the Pulse 5 and Pulse 4 are good for about 6 to 7 hours of playback time. It's not bad given that they do have a light feature to power, but if stamina is very important to you, then these are not the speakers that you want to go with. Now, if you are looking for stamina, then you're either going to want to go with the Charge 5 or the Extreme 3. Now, the Charge 5 has an advertised battery life of 20 hours, but real-to-world use with the speaker playing at 80% volume, which is a really good listening volume for both indoor and outdoor use. The Charge 5 is good for about 10 hours of playback time. And then there's the Extreme 3. Now, the Extreme 3 has an advertised battery life of 15 hours, but real-to-world use is good for about 8 to 9 hours of playback time. Whereas with the Boombox 3, Boombox 2, Flip 5, and Flip 6, they're all good for about 8 hours of playback time. So they're all going to have no problem keeping up with you for a full day of listening. However, if you do want a little bit more stamina, you're either going to want to go with either the Charge 5 or the Extreme 3. And if stamina is very important to you, then you do want to stay away from the Pulse 5 and Pulse 4. Now, when it comes to charging these speakers, most of these speakers charge via a USB-C port, which is good. However, with the Pulse 5, Pulse 4, Flip 5, Flip 6, and Clip 4, these are the only ports that you will find on these speakers. And with all of these speakers, you can only use them wirelessly. Whereas with the Charge 5, it does have a USB-A output, so you can always use it to charge your own devices. But then there's the Extreme 3. Now, the Extreme 3 also has a USB-A output, so you can charge your own devices, and it also has an audio jack, so you can still use it with a wired connection. But the really cool thing with the Extreme 3 is that with its USB-C port, you can use it to charge the speaker itself. But you can also use the USB-C port on the Extreme 3 as a wired connection, and you can also use it to charge your own devices. And this is a very unique feature that isn't found on a lot of other speakers out there, and the Extreme 3 is the only speaker here that has a USB-C port that does this. But then there are the boomboxes. Now, the boombox 2 charges via a DC port, and there is a power adapter that you have to keep track of. Whereas with the boombox 3, it charges via a universal AC port. So personally, I do feel that charging the boombox 3 is a lot easier, because if you were to take the boombox 3 to a friend's house and if you were to forget the charging cable, it's very likely that your friend is gonna have one of these cables lying around. But ports-wise, both of these speakers still have a USB-A output so that you can charge your own devices, and they both also still have audio jacks. But when it comes to Bluetooth connectivity, all of these speakers can be connected to 2 devices at the same time so that you and a friend can both be DJ. All of these speakers have zero latency across the board when watching movies or videos on your phone, whether you're using an iPhone or an Android device. But when it comes to audio codecs, all of these speakers only have support for SBC. But now let's talk about listening to music with these speakers. The Clip 4 has a single frontward firing woofer and a single frontward firing passive radiator. The Flip 5 has a single frontward firing woofer and dual passive radiators that shoot out the sides. Whereas with the Flip 6, it has a frontward firing woofer, a frontward firing tweeter, and dual passive radiators that shoot out the sides. Now the Charge 5 has the same speaker setup, except it's a little bigger. Now the Pulse 4 has a single upward firing woofer and a single downward firing passive radiator. Whereas with the Pulse 5, it has an upward firing woofer, an upward firing tweeter, and a single downward firing passive radiator. Now first, I want to address the importance of having a woofer and a tweeter on your speaker. Since the woofer handles the mids and the tweeter handles the highs, this is going to help your speakers sound more open and have better instrument separation. But so that you can see for yourself, let me just show you.
That we were meant to be. We kept running from the shadows in the night, realizing it was not worth the fight. Moving on alone was not the right, 'cause we were never meant to be. Dum dum da dum day. Dum dum da dum day. Dum dum da dum day.
So like we have just seen, the woofer handles the mids and the tweeter handles the highs. So this is why the Flip 6, Charge 5, and Pulse 5 are going to have better instrument separation than, let's say, the Flip 5 and Pulse 4. Now, when it comes to the Extreme 3, it has a dual frontward firing woofers, dual frontward firing tweeters, and dual passive radiators that shoot out the sides. Now, the Boombox 2 has a similar setup, except larger. But then there's the Boombox 3, which has a frontward firing subwoofer, frontward firing woofers, dual frontward firing tweeters, which are stacked on top of the woofers, and dual passive radiators that shoot out the sides. But now we're going to jump into the sound test. All of these speakers are playing with their stock EQs, but the boomboxes are playing well at 75% volume, the Extreme 3 is playing at 94% volume, and all of these other speakers are playing at max volume.
They say every day's a new day. Live it like your last day. It's okay to feel great. Yeah, you're all jumping on a new wave. Time goes by, but I stay stuck up in my old ways. So hard to unlearn habits we've gotten addicted to. believe. It's so hard for me to see that I deserve this. Deserve to feel happy now. So please go easy. Please go easy. Easy on me. Go easy on me. Go easy on me. Easy on me. Don't give me a hard time, just let me live my life in peace. My life in peace. Been broken a long time, don't remember the highlights of me. Highlights of me. Oh, please help me. Please go easy, easy on me. I can't believe it's so hard for me to see that I deserve this. Deserve to feel happy now. So please go easy. Please go easy. So hard to unlearn habits we got addicted to. I'm trying to change my life, but so much easier to say than do. Say than do. Oh, please help me. Please go easy. Please go easy. Please help. Please go easy. Go easy on me. So go easy.
So obviously, the larger the speaker, the louder it's going to get and the more bass it's going to have. Now when comparing the Boombox 2 and Boombox 3 together, the Boombox 3 simply has more bass than the Boombox 2 because of the additional front-wood-firing subwoofer. And when comparing the Pulse 5 to the Pulse 4, the Pulse 5 sounds more open because of the additional tweeter. And the same thing goes for the Flip 6 and Flip 5. The Flip 6 sounds more open than the Flip 5. However, it's very important to keep in mind that with both the Pulse 5 and Pulse 4, you're mainly paying for the light feature, because the Flip 6 and Charge 5 sound and perform much better than both Pulses. However, I do feel the Pulse 5 does sound better than the Flip 5, but the Flip 5 does sound better than the Pulse 4. But finally, there's the Extreme 3. Obviously, it's going to perform better than all of these smaller speakers, but it's not going to get as loud or have as much bass as the boomboxes. The only thing that I feel that you need to look out for is that with JBL's newer speakers, they've all been coming included with a brighter stock EQ on them. But that's not a problem for most of these speakers because most of these speakers have an adjustable EQ. With the Boombox 3, Boombox 2, Extreme 3, Pulse 5, Charge 5, and Flip 6, you can go in and adjust your EQ to your liking. However, the Pulse 4, Flip 5, and Clip 4 don't have adjustable EQs. And I do have to point out one final thing. With all of these speakers, they have onboard media control buttons, just as you'd expect, so you can skip through your music and adjust the volume of your music directly from the speaker itself. Very simple. But with the Pulse 5, which is the newest speaker here, they got rid of the media control buttons, which I just find to be super annoying and it's not convenient at all. Because with this speaker, if you want to skip through your music or adjust the volume, you gotta do so from your phone. But finally, let's talk about pairing these speakers up with other speakers. Now, all of these speakers, except for the Clip 4, are using JBL's PartyBoost, meaning that you can pair them up to other JBL PartyBoost speakers, like either a Boombox 3, a Boombox 2, an Extreme 3, a Charge 5, a Pulse 5, a Pulse 4, a Flip 5, or to a Flip 6, and you can have up to 100 speakers paired together, which is obviously just overkill. Now, if you're going to be mixing and matching your speakers, then all of your speakers are only going to play in sync. If you want to get left and right stereo sound going, you're going to need two of the exact same speakers. So if you want to get left and right stereo sound going with the Pulse 5, then you're going to need two Pulse 5s. Or if you want to get left and right stereo sound going with the Charge 5, you're going to need two Charge 5s. Unfortunately, if you were to pair a Pulse 5 to a Pulse 4, they're only going to play in sync. And if you were to pair a JBL Flip 5 to a Flip 6, they're only going to play in sync as well. And if you were to pair a Boombox 3 to a Boombox 2, even though they're the same series of speaker, they're only going to play in sync as well. And it's also very important to keep in mind that you cannot pair any of JBL's smaller PartyBoost speakers to any of JBL's larger PartyBox speakers. And also keep in mind, you cannot pair any of JBL's PartyBoost speakers to any of JBL's older speakers that are using JBL Connect Plus. So for example, let's say you have either a Pulse 5 or a Pulse 4 which are using JBL's PartyBoost. They will not get wirelessly synced up to the JBL Pulse 3, which is using JBL Connect Plus. Now, even though there is some fragmentation to look out for and there are some rules that you have to keep in mind, personally, I do feel that if you plan on buying multiple speakers and if you plan on constantly pairing them together, I do feel that JBL is the way to go because PartyBoost just works. You just press one button on each speaker, they'll automatically sync up and find each other, and they do so very quickly, and skipping is never an issue. But with all that being said, overall, I am a fan of JBL's current speaker lineup, and I'm very happy to see that they are continuing to expand their PartyBoost lineup. And JBL's newer speakers are all coming included with improved sound quality from their predecessors, because JBL is adding tweeters or subwoofers to their newer speakers. Now, if you're looking for a small speaker to easily take on the go with you, the Clip 4 is a great option. But if you want something with more sound, then you'll want to go with either the Flip 6 or Flip 5. But personally, I highly recommend that you go with the Flip 6 because it genuinely sounds better than the Flip 5 thanks to the additional tweeter. And if you want even more sound but still want something super portable, then you can go for the Charge 5. Now, when it comes to the Pulse 4 and Pulse 5, these speakers, you're mainly buying them for the light feature, because the Flip 6 and Charge 5 easily sound much better than these other two speakers. However, when it comes to choosing between the Pulse 4 and Pulse 5, personally, I think I would go with the Pulse 4 because the instrument separation on the Pulse 5 isn't a big enough reason to upgrade. But then there's the Boombox 3 and Boombox 2. Personally, I do think that it's worth springing for the Boombox 3 because of the improved bass response, because at higher volumes, the Boombox 2 can sound a little too bright. Whereas with the Boombox 3, that additional subwoofer just makes your music sound more dynamic. And finally, there's the Extreme 3. This speaker is a good jack of all trades. It's small and portable, and it has a good battery life, but it also gets decently loud. My main critique about it is that it does have a bright sound signature. However, you can easily fix that through its adjustable EQ. If you made it this far, I guess you enjoyed the video, so hit the like button and get subscribed. If you want to pick any of the products up, they'll be linked down below. And if you want to further support the channel, check out the merch. I made some shirts and hoodies that look and feel great. And you know I can be very particular, so I'll only slap my name on something if I'm really proud of it.